Hello and welcome to My Own Worst Enemy. This is a new attempt for me. We're going to do an interview here with Byron Henderson. Byron, thank you for joining me this evening.
Thanks for asking me on.
So what we're going to talk about tonight is Federation Space, or more particularly what Byron has done to Federation Space and Lyran Space. I think now you're up to 2.0, if I'm not mistaken.
There's been a couple of variations. 2.0 is where I started, and then it's downsized a little bit. I'll tell you about that.
Okay. Well, yeah, I've got tons of questions, and like I said, I don't know which way the conversation will go, but it'll be good. Whichever way it drifts, I'm sure. So are you a war gamer, board gamer, or?
It's always, my brother and I were always war gamers. We loved Panzer Blitz. My brother was big into his military history, and he kind of got me into that as well. He was 5 years older than me, so I was always following. I was the little brother, and we always enjoyed that. And we were big Star Trek fans growing up as well. So when this game came out in 1981, we were real enthusiastic about it. And we played Starfleet battles. We enjoyed Starfleet battles, and this course comes right. Oh yeah, there's the game book.
1981, the original copy.
1981, real good art on that front.
And then you also mentioned 1979.
1979. We were playing that, and we were playing it from the little booklets, and we had so much fun with that. Just we were big into the shoot 'em up, which is what Starfleet Battles kind of was in its original, original setup. And then, of course, Federation Space comes out, and that fit us to a T, because we're more war gamers than we were miniature players. And Starfleet Battles is a little more miniatures oriented, and Federation Space, of course, is a little more war game map encounter oriented. So that was great.
Well, the interesting thing for me about Federation Space, I was into Starfleet Battles first. I've never actually played a full game of Federation Space. I used Federation Space as a strategic map for Starfleet Battles.
You see, you did, and that was part of its use. That's in the rules on the last page. They say, use this as a strategic map from Starfleet Battles. And apparently most people did that. Now, we didn't. So we very quickly figured out that Federation Space is horribly imbalanced as a board game. I mean, just unplayable. The Coalition's way underrated. And, the Alliance forces are way too strong. And it's just... there are things that make it unplayable. So we loved the game, though. It's simple, it's elegant. And a lot of my friends, when I talked to them, they were like, oh, yeah, we never noticed that, because they did the same thing. They just played Starfleet Battles with it.
I never noticed either. So now, before you get too far into Federation Space, so are you still wargaming? Do you still play the more hex encounter-y type war games?
I still play them. In fact, just from a Federation Space standpoint, I had professional map boards made up. So I've got a game in there set up right now, and I'm doing a kind of an after-action report. I decided a few months ago I just tried to do on the Geek, just do a little thread on how to attack and defend in Federation Space, because there's a couple of little things you can do. There's some variations, and it turned into kind of an after-action report. So I'm just playing a game now on there and pointing things out as we go.
And that's a good read on that. I've been reading through your attack and defense strategies. And we're going to talk a little bit about custom map boards encounters a little bit in this video. So I did read through your attack and your defense stuff. That is pretty neat. So you're still wargaming. What's one of your current favorite war games that you can name off the top of your head?
I recently got an older copy of Africa Corps.
Okay.
And I also bought the, I believe it's Compass Games that put out the kind of African campaign, which is kind of the cleanup and build up of Africa Corps. But they put it out with another mounted map board, so I was like, I just had to get that.
Yeah.
I haven't got to play either one of them yet because I've been messing with other things. I don't have so much time. The other problem I have is I just don't have a face-to-face opponent right now for much of anything. So that's a difficulty. So a lot of stuff has to be done solitaire, and I don't find that as invigorating. Some games lend themselves to it, and some games are kind of just difficult to play that way.
Yep, that is true.
It's hard to surprise yourself if you're playing solitaire. So
there are certain things that don't translate well into solitaire. There's a ways around it, but I hear you. Okay, so I guess going back to Federation Space, let's start there. The original Federation Space that came out in 1981.
Right.
And we mentioned that people use this for more of a grand strategic map for Starfleet battles. I honestly think that was the main intent of this game. From what I've read and what I was just reading through the rule book, it seems like it was thrown out more to appease Starfleet battles fans than a standalone game.
Task Force Games put out a lot of small games like this, like Armor at Kursk, Federation Space, and they don't seem to have anything other than to be a very compact game. But this one has the advantage, like you said, it fed off Starfleet battles that came out a few years before and just exploded. And I think you're probably right. It was probably more considered more as a strategic game for Starfleet battles than it was as a standalone game.
And even the way even when they were called out on it, the response was kind of like, well, here's some sample counters, how they should have looked, maybe, sort of. We're not going to give you ratings for all of them. Good luck. And it was just like, okay.
Right. Nexus 9, they came out and said, well, here's the heavy cruisers. But there's more stuff in there. What interested me was in Nexus 6, they published Lyran Space. I'm not sure how you actually pronounce that, to be honest. And they put out a page that was, well, here's the add-on to the map. And then they put out complete fleet updates. But they noted in the article, they said, we're not answering any questions about this. And we'll fix it all later in Federation and Empire. Or
ignore it, as the case may be.
Or ignore it, depending on how things go. It'll all be taken care of later. And this is just if you want to keep doing Federation Space. You want to keep using that for right now. And that was really the thing that I jumped on to say, well, let's fix this game. Because I love my brother and I, when Federation Empire came out, we bought it right away, and we were reading all through it and everything and trying to figure it out. But it was such a different system that we just couldn't wrap our brains around it. It just did a lot of things that normal war games don't do. And we were war gamers. And it of course, it did things totally different than Federation Space. So I backed up. We both backed up and went back to Federation Space and tried to figure out ways to balance the game out. And never really got it done.
I bounced off Federation and Empire really hard up until recently. I drug it back out. Actually, I bought the most recent copy. I own the original copy of that one too. The first copy, I should say, that came out. But I recently reread through the rules, and it's not as bad as I remember it. And I'm actually, at some point, I'm going to attempt to play that one all the way through, but not anytime soon.
Well, I recently reread through an example of play.
And those are always helpful, right?
Yeah, and it was online, and it wasn't anything special, but it did make me think that, well, maybe 20 years ago or 30 years ago or however long ago we're talking about, maybe I didn't wrap my brain around it. Like you said, it didn't sound that much different, but I still like the simplicity of Federation Space. It's just an elegant system. It's 9 pages of rules.
So before you get too far, you mentioned the Lyrans or the Lyrans. I want to do this real quick. Let me see if I can do a screen share if I can. First time I've tried this. So,
okay.
Tell me if you can see that word.
I can.
Okay. And how do you pronounce it?
I always said Lyran,
So did I. So I've always said Lyran. I'm glad you said that. Most people I think say Lyran.
Really? Okay. I'm okay with that,
I'm either way, I'm okay with this one. Lyran or Lyran. I do say Lyran. I've always, since high school, that's what I've said.
Yeah.
So that's always been the case. I'm going to show you one more word here before we go too far, because this is going to come up too.
Okay.
I've got a difference of opinion on this one.
Uh-oh.
Pronounce that one.
Oh, wow. You know what? We always called him, we did the phonetic thing. We just made Kazinti.
Okay. So everybody in the world, if you watch the original animated series, they say Kazinti as well. Larry Niven, the creator of the man Kazin Wars, says Kazinti. I've always said Zinti, and I'll always say Zinti. So if you hear me say Zinty in this video, that's what I mean. I've got my cat. He's not here right now. He's a black cat. His name is Zinty.
Oh, really? Wow.
So I'll never call him Kazinti. I think if Larry Niven had wanted us to say Kazinti, he should put the apostrophe after the K.
Well, yeah.
But I'm going to call him Zinty. I think it sounds better. I don't know why, but I've always said that. So bear with me on that one.
Two harsh consonants at the beginning are rough. You know,
it just sounds weird to me when I watch the old animated series and they call him Kazinti. Just like chalk nails on the chalkboard to me. I don't know why.
I don't think I've ever seen the animated series, and actually, I kind of want to go back and watch it. I recently
highly recommend it.
Yeah, well, I've heard it's very good.
It's well-known science fiction authors at the time that wrote the episodes, and honestly, I think the episodes are animated. The animation is not good. There's no way around that.
Yeah.
In fact, I wish they would use the audio and just kind of reanimate it like Doctor Who's doing.
Oh, well,
but the stories are great. Most of the stories are great.
Well, most of the original series stories were all done by really top-notch science fiction writers, and they were great too. And I understand the animated series it's really well done.
Yeah.
So, but it's just something I've never gotten back to watch. I actually started watching Star Trek Continues, which is a fan-made production.
I watched that. Yeah.
And I thought it was excellent as well. I thought they did a great job of finishing that up, and it just kind of it's good to see stuff like that out there.
I kind of envy you if you haven't seen the animated series. That's awesome. And actually, if you don't want to watch the bad animation, you could also read the Star Trek logs 1 through however many they are. It's just basically the animated series. I think Alan Dean Foster might have written the story. So it's like great original series Star Trek stories you're missing if you haven't watched those.
Yeah, I will. I want to go back and see it. It's like one of those things that's on my to-do list, and it's been there for a decade or more.
we all have those lists.
Yeah, exactly.
Like I said, the Federation of Space I've had since '81. I've never played a full game, but I'm going to remedy that pretty soon here, I hope.
Well, here's the thing. You can't play a full game with it because the Klingons won't make it past the Kazin unless you actually do some updating and make some adjustments to it.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that in just a second. But finishing up, I guess, with the original state of the game, one thing I noticed, and I noticed this while setting up for the game I'm going to play, is if you look at and I've got, and this is not, I actually own 2 copies of Federation Space because I lost my map in the original.
Oh, wow.
So this is I actually opened up the copy I bought. So this is the fleet charts.
Yeah,
I noticed though there's no fleet organization chart for the Hydrons.
So, the Hydrons,
what's going on there?
They're a weird addition to the game because they only enter the game if the Klingons attack them, and their fleet is probably the most powerful fleet on the board.
Which is odd because it seems like it's one of the smallest fleets on the board.
It's small, but every ship has a fighter in it, and all the ships are badly overrated, extremely overrated in this game, and it's suicide for the Klingons to even try to attack them. It's suicide for the Klingons to attack anyone in the original game, but the Hydrons especially. So they never enter the game, and that's one of kind of an annoyance. You've got an entire kingdom there that is never used in the original game. Is one of the things that I wanted to kind of fix it when I updated it or made variants to it, at least to have an option for them to come in.
And you did, I think, in your rules, and so it's probably what we'll go to next. Just out of curiosity here, I know that so it's not Task Force Games anymore. It's Amarillo Design Bureau, I guess, holds the rights to this stuff now. Has anyone ever contacted you from either to say stop what you're doing or could you come do some more for us?
Here's my the extent of my contact with the Amarillo Design Bureau, and I got onto the Facebook group for Task Force Games, and I posted a map. I started to create maps, and I posted the Nexus 6 map that added the Lyran space to the original Federation space map. And I made both of those. I posted the complete map, the game map with Lyran space on it. And I just said, here's what was in Nexus 6. Here's the map when you add Lyran space to it. And this is Federation space. And a couple of days, if that long afterwards, someone official from ADB came on and said, this needs to be removed, blah, 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 blah. They got very defensive about it. And I was very surprised
Yeah.
Because it wasn't like, it was a PDF of a map that
Yeah.
was homemade we made it in Visio 5, which is a very old program. And they seem to be they have a very controlling attitude. And I think it's detrimental, but
I think so too. Part of it, I think, is the license they hold is gold. Honestly, it's something that's unique that they managed to snag in the early days,
Mhm.
and they've held on to it, and which they should do, I think, because what Star Trek is now is a different discussion for a different video. But so they've held on to this license, and it really, they should be doing something with it instead of guarding it like they are. Now, there may be reasons we're not aware of why they don't.
True.
The license, something like you've done, and we'll look at it in a second here. I would think that somebody be knocking at your door saying, "Hey, would you want to work together? And maybe we can do Federation Space update and republish it and make some money."
Well, that's the thing. I'd love to see it redone. I don't have to pay me for it. I did this. I love it. I love this game, and you can just. I started messing with this game seriously about 14 years ago to really get it updated and working. And I just love the game. Yeah. And everything that I've put out is just variants. And I don't know why they wouldn't embrace fan variations of of the products they put out, but they don't. And
yeah, I don't understand that either. I think it's weird if you're maybe they're making their money somewhere else and they just they don't care. Well, but it's like I said, that license it's a money printing press. I think if they utilized it properly, and I just don't think
if they utilized it, and again, like I said, take it and run with it. I understand none of this stuff is mine. I've pulled from all sorts of things, from Star Trek and from Starfleet battles and et cetera, and it's a variant, and I think if they supported fan variants a little more, they would get so much input that they could put stuff out. They could put this out as a simpler version of the Starfleet Battles universe as a game and probably make a lot of money off of it. Now, maybe I'm wrong there. I don't know. But I do what you do. I don't know why they don't do stuff with this.
And maybe they're afraid that they'll lose their license somehow. If they call attention to themselves, they'll get squished. I don't know. I really would love to see them start becoming active again. I think that would be great.
I agree.
So we've mentioned now Lyran Space 2. So I'm going to go back to the screen share if it works, and we're going to pull up your rule set and just take a look at that. If I can do this.
Is this Lyran Space 2.0, or is this?
It's 2.0 because and you'll see this when we get in here.
Okay.
If I can, I don't know if you can see that. So it says Federation Space 2.0. So what? Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Oh, okay. I thought I might have lost you in the transition.
No, sorry.
So this says Federation Space 2.0. This is actually Lyran Space 2.0. I renamed this, and if you look, I've got some purple scribbly notes in there that says they're in per Pinkle.
So, I got it. Okay.
What I did, I took your Lyran Space, and I was going to update this with some of my own house rule type things. So sure. I've gone in here and edited this up just a little bit, but this is your document. The only reason I'm using this instead of yours is because I have some notes in here that we could either talk to or look at. I think I haven't looked at this in quite a while. And of course, there's your introduction and your acknowledgement.
Let me say about Lyran Space 2.0 was the very first thing that I did like 10 years ago or 14 years ago. I'm sorry. And about 10 years ago, I stopped doing that simply because I had a playable game. The game worked. And this document was me writing, doing what you did essentially here. I took the original Federation Space rules, wrote them out in the document, added the introduction, added all the variations that I wanted, and cleaned them up over and over again. And I'm sure there's still some editorial issues with them, but this is the original rules set with the additions for Lyran Space 2 that I did, which that's a game that turned out to be huge. It's a monster game. It's not just the original map. It's the original map with originally I was going to put some next generation stuff in it. So the Cardassians got tacked onto the top of the map, and the Federation got bigger, and I adjusted the map in a number of ways. And it's huge. It's a huge monster game. but it works. It's a ton of fun. We played through it and just had a great time with it. I do have some friends in the area, and they helped me play test it and played it through, and we just had a great time with it.
And I would love to play Lyran Space 2.0, but the problem is, like you said, there's so many counters. I actually redid the counters for my redo here of Federation Space, like you did, and that was extremely time consuming for me to do.
Yeah.
And there was no easy way to take your templates that I could find and just print them out and have them look like decent counters. I'm not good at what do you call it? Print and play, making counters and cutting them up. Just doesn't work for me. And so what I did actually was I worked with, or I ordered from Print and Play, I think is who it was, counters and a map. And I'll show you those once we get past these rules. So my game is actually smaller. I looked at Lyran Space, and part of the reason I edited this document is I wanted something that was as close to the original Federation Space as I could get it. And I noticed that you've kind of gone back to that as well. So
I have. I keep getting smaller and smaller.
Yeah.
And I think that's just, I found the rule set that does work and the fleets that work and the balance is there. And then I said, okay, but it got huge in the making. And so then it downsized to Federation Space and Lyran Space Redux. I mean, those are just the Lyran Space map. One is the original one, and one is one with some changes. And I got some ideas from a guy named SC Green, who did his own Federation Space, and he changed the map in some interesting ways. But he had the original counters, and he added all the Nexus addendum, like offensive and defensive drones and things like that were in Nexus. And he made the counter sheets, and he made a map that you can print out. And it was very interesting work. It was very good. It was well done. He did a good job.
And so, that's what I try to do here, is just kind of get it back to the original. In fact, one of the early, and you've done this too. I saw this in some of the older Board Game Geek stuff, I think, where you actually tried to make the original work with its components, its original counters. And I kind of did that fairly recently with the attack values and defense values on those counters. And what I did was, for combat, I had you roll a D12. And are you familiar with Space Empires 4X?
I have heard of it, but I'm not familiar with the system.
So I tried to borrow their combat system a little bit. So they basically it's the attack value minus the defense value to get combat. So I took a D12 and had the original attack value, and the subtraction thing didn't quite work. So I kind of did let's see, how did I do this? Because I tried two different things with this.
Yeah.
And I think what I ended up doing was trying to throw a certain amount of die for the attack and the defense value. So you could have hits cancel out if the defender rolled right. The problem is the combat kind of worked, but the problem is you could end up just rolling and rolling and rolling. And it got to be too just mundane in combat. It's like, I don't want to roll dice for one small battle for 30 minutes. That's what it turned into. So I gave up on that.
Well, you actually did something that I did a long time ago as well. I was just actually going through balance. There's a thread on the Geek, says, and I had Balancing Federation Space. We were just throwing out ideas, and I took a World War II game where you did what you do. You do 2 dice 6 for combat, and you hit on a 5 or a 6, or you hit on a 6, depending on what type of ship you have or what type of tank is firing, what kind of counter it is. And you just do that all the way down the line. But it, like you said, it turned into a dice fest. And it kind of works, but at the same time, it's not really, it's not streamlined enough to work well, I guess is the best way.
I agree. Yeah. So my dream, I guess, is I would love to, at some point, make Federation Space as printed work. So I may at some point try to revisit that, but I don't know if that's even possible. I really don't.
I don't think it's possible. The after action report I told you about earlier that I'm doing in the middle of now is as close as I can come to that, and I'm still having to adjust the fleets. That's really one of the keys I found in Federation Space is the fleet organization charts. That was supposed to be a great leveler, but they didn't make a lot of sense when you broke them down. Yeah, the Federation was, you could use fleets from the Gorn border all the way across Federation space against the Klingons, but you couldn't use the fleets on the Kazini border, which is right next to them. So
Yeah.
there were problems with it, but you could see that what they were trying to do with the original game was that's where your play balance came in. Who could use what ships against what empires?
Yeah.
So I'm actually, what I'm doing right now is I've jettisoned the original fleet organizations, but I still have fleet organizations in the game, and trying to use as few counters as possible, few additional counters, and get the original game balance. The real problem you run into, and that I run into, is fleet exhaustion. There's not enough counters in the original game to continue a game for the extent that the game is supposed to go.
Yeah.
One or two big battles can wipe out your ability to attack, and
So
that happens.
I actually kind of like that. And it goes back to Star Trek. And I grew up with the original series.
Mhm.
And the implications, if you go back and watch the original series, to me at least, the implications were that a ship like the Enterprise, like the heavy cruiser, that there weren't very many. There were only like, and in some of the episodes they call this out. And in fact, the one I remember is the time travel one, Tomorrow is Yesterday, when it was the Air Force pilot. You know, he's with Kirk and he says, wow, he's like, it must have taken something incredible to build this ship. And Kirk says, the response is, yeah, there's only 12 like this in the fleet. And there's other examples that I can call up in the original series where they kind of hint towards, you know, these are special ships. So I kind of like the smaller scale, and I kind of like having fewer counters. And I think in the original rules, I think, if I'm not mistaken, they tell you that you're limited by the counter mix. You can build ships, but you have to have the economic points to do it.
Well, that's the other problem with that. The economic system as presented will only let you build about 2 ships every 2 turns.
Yeah, and I can see where that would be a problem. Yeah,
yeah, that's where you start running out of ships. If you noticed in Learn Space 2, I moved the economic system to where you're doing it every turn.
Yeah, which I think is a brilliant maneuver.
Yeah. And that's kind of necessary. You know, in the game I'm playing right now, I'm not using that. But again, I've added a few ships here and there just to fill out the fleets properly. But it's only like a ship or 2 per fleet.
Yeah,
at the most. So there's a number of things I'm trying to do to balance that out, so you don't just lose everything. But it's almost unavoidable in the long term.
Yeah, exactly. So this is still talking about the map. I think we've hit that pretty hard. The sequence of play, I don't think you've changed really, except for the like you said, the economic phase, of course, and the buying cards, and we'll talk about those in a second.
Yeah,
but I think your sequence of play is pretty much
it's the same. I didn't really do anything different with it. I added some things, like you said, buying cards during the economic phase, but the sequence itself is the same.
Yeah, and then even your, like you said, I think you followed the fleet release orders. Here you talk about that a little bit. And again, when I play through this, I'm more sandboxy and like narrative play, so I'm not going to follow fleet release stuff when I play through this.
Yeah, that's one of the first things we, as just me and my brother and anyone we played with, we were like, yeah, we're not going to count ships. We're not going to try to figure out which fleets have how many ships on which border. We'll let that go.
Yeah, and I know there's wargamers cringing because some wargamers are all about winning, right, and strategy and counting cards and ships and whatever. So
yeah, well, it never made sense, you know, that I couldn't attack the Federation with the Klingon home fleet. It's not allowed, you know, and I'm like, but it's there. Why couldn't I use it, you know?
Exactly. I feel the same way about that. So and you talk about the cards. Now, one thing I did was when I do this playthrough is I've changed the way cards work. I don't have 2 decks of cards.
Okay.
I have a combined deck. So there are cards that will benefit one side or another, but it is probably a smaller card deck. Maybe it's the same size. I don't know, but I am going to change the cards up a little bit, and I'll show you some. I think I've got them with me. I'll show you some samples of those once we get towards the end of this. So I did change that, although it's your idea, and I love adding cards to this game was genius. Let me just say that now.
That's the best thing.
I mean, it's awesome. The randomness that they can add to it, it makes it way more exciting to play this game. So that was, again, I don't know why Amarillo Design Bureau isn't knocking on your door.
Well, I'll say this. I think you're absolutely right. If there's any one variant that people should use in this game, no matter how you want to play it, add the cards.
Yeah.
The cards just make the game go. And also say, I've actually updated the cards and haven't updated the files, just because I keep coming up with different ideas for different cards.
And I'll show you some of my cards because I came up with some new ones. Maybe we'll have to get together and design some cards, but I came up with some original ones on my own.
Nice. Yeah, and there's so much room for them. I mean,
oh yeah,
I was pulling card ideas from all over the place, and I'm sure you've done the same thing. I would love to see what you got.
And now the only thing with the cards, and I'll have to work this out in play testing. I don't really want a side to have a handful of cards. I'm looking at this as a 2-player game, so I'm thinking when I do the playthrough, I think I'm going to have each side hold maybe 2 or 3 cards in their hand at any one time.
Right.
And then be able to buy a card if they want to, but you will get a card every couple of turns or so, I think, just because of the random events they do add.
I was just saying, I just noticed starting on turn 3, each major empire drives 1 card.
I think
do every other turn. So yeah, there's the important thing is that the cards are in the flow of the game, because
right. And I don't know if it'll work, but yeah,
they add a lot to the game. They add a whole bunch. So yeah, I think it's a great idea. And especially if you got a single deck, you may be drawing cards that aren't any good for you. You know,
right? And I think you mentioned that sides could trade, right? So I kind of like that. So yeah. And then the last thing I had on here was they were talking about the general war and how certain ships that aren't war can't move and all that. And I just, again, I'm a sandbox guy, so I didn't really like that rule, but it's not going to apply to me when I do the playthrough anyway. So I'm not really.
Well, and that's fine, as long as the point of that is that you set everyone up, but you don't get to just completely adjust everything for events.
Yeah.
So there's a limitation. You're basically setting up and going, okay, I hope things work out this way, because an over adjustment can really throw a springer in the works. But that's completely viable to have ships moving around. It's just that the fleets are still limited by where they can set up anyway.
And so when I do the playthrough, one of the things I'm going to do is I don't know how the war is going to begin. I'm going to have a chart of possibilities, percentiles of how's it going to start. So that way, an empire is not going to know that this war is going to begin, let's say on the Romulan Gorn border or the Zinti Klingon.
Nice idea. I like it.
You don't know where to move your fleets to, right?
Yeah. So and I stuck to the official, the Klingon is in, and then the Federation and everything. But I've even thrown in recently a optional Romulan early entry rule.
Yeah.
And having the wars start over on the Romulan side, that's a real interesting idea, I think. Have the Romulans and Gorns go at each other.
And if you really want to get a historical, not that this is history, but you could also have, let's say, the Gorns attack the Federation or the Zinti attack the Federation.
You can do that. Now, then you're almost playing a death of the Federation scenario. And
everybody would dogpile the Federation. I'm sure.
Everybody dogpile the Federation, exactly. And then the Hydrants wipe out the Klingons. You can do that in the original game.
Or like in Starfleet battles, we would sometimes have the Orion pirates hanging off the side of the board, and they would just come in and clean up after a battle and kill everybody.
Oh man, the Orions are one group that I've never actively added into the game.
You did have. I've got off to the side here the rules that you posted recently on potential Orion pirates, which I love. So I'm going to use those actually. Those
are the new cards. That was something that I thought, well, I'll just add cards that let you buy Orion fleets according to the original rules. I forget how I came about thinking that. Maybe I just read the rules over again and thought, well, I ought to get the Orions in there somehow.
Yeah.
Plus, I had a Hammerfield. I had a Hammerfield counter made for the Orion ship that was in Captain's Log number 3. There's a couple of ships. You mentioned the timeline, where you go back in time and everything like that. And there was the Enterprise popping in, through a different timeline and having a different ship.
Oh yeah. In the Next Generation, the Enterprise C. Yeah.
And I added that for the Federation, and then I added one for the Klingons, and the ship that I named it after came out of Captain Logs 3. So I ended up adding the Hammerfield, which was the Orion ship that was in that same issue as well. Okay. So that was just
that kind of stuff, that's neat. If it's a card too, it's optional, right? You can put the card in or leave it out.
You can take it out. I mean, there's plenty of cards that I'd probably go, okay, yeah, we shouldn't use this one in this game, because it just might not work. But
Yeah. Yep.
um,
Okay. And then so movement, I don't think you changed movement really.
nah.
And then stacking, I don't think you've changed stacking. I did notice when I was setting up the game that I think the game violates some stacking rules in setup, if I'm not mistaken. It may just be the way I did it too, though.
The thing about stacking is there's been a lot of variation. That's one of the things that first came out to try to balance it. Because in Nexus 1, there were stacking options, I believe, if I recall. I have Nexus 1 up here. I could take a look. But there were stacking options to allow players to have a 10-ship stack instead of a 6-ship stack.
Too many.
Well, that really was too many. I added in these rules that the Klingons could put together frigate squadrons, because I always loved running frigate squadrons in Starfleet battles. And so you could have an F5L and 2 F5 variants in a frigate squadron only counted for one ship. That was one way the Klingons kind of made up for the Federation CVs, which are monsters. But I've moved away from that a little bit. But yeah, I think that variant is in this rules, though.
Yeah. And as a side note, see, when the carriers, that's another thing that grates me. I don't see Star Trek as having fighters and carriers in it.
Yeah.
But I'm okay with it. I leave them in. I'm okay with it. But it just doesn't seem like Star Trek to me. I don't know why.
Well, it just wasn't in the original show.
That's why. Yeah. Sure, that's why.
The thing is, I came up with I didn't come up with them, but I put in escort carriers. So you got the escort rules all down there, and made a whole bunch of escort rules. And then I came down and said, if you just expand the combat results or the combat board, and you put a second level on it and make it, your carriers can hang back, take part in combat, but they're a little harder to hit, and that can reflect escorts.
So, and that was another genius design, and we'll show that tactical combat display in a second here. But that was another great addition to this game, and it changes the game dramatically for the better. And in here in this stacking where I've got, you can see I wrote drones in here. And one of my first early editions of this, I actually had the Zinti were always the drone race in Starfleet battle. So I had drone rules, and I still think they work. I may put them back in at some point. They kind of work like fighters. You throw them out, your ships stay on that support row, and the drones go up front. And the drones are almost like a small ship, and you've got to destroy those drones before you can even think about hitting the ship behind it that fired the drone.
Oh, that's pretty cool. I like that because it's straight out of Starfleet battles. Drones were a big part, like you said, in the Kazini and the Klingon battles.
They would kill people with the drones. I mean, it was just, you didn't want to face drones.
It was just never-ending drone swarms.
And so here you're talking about kind of what we already did, where you've added some of these other ships, which, like I said, I'm not really doing I'm trying to keep the ship count down. And then your design note tiers where you talked about the super stacks. I agree with this too. The thought of having nothing but dreadnoughts or heavy cruisers in a stack, six heavy cruisers in a stack, that just doesn't, no, we're not going to do that.
I don't mind heavy cruisers. I have trouble.
I mean, 6 at a time.
3 CVs and 3 dreadnoughts in a stack, and just go flame everything out in space because nothing can stand up to it. So there was a decided idea to limit that. And there's plenty of big ships in this. Yeah. There's tons of big ships, so you can have plenty of strong stacks, but you can't just make the giant stack and go. And my brother, who I played a lot of this stuff with, he's the guy that would do that. He's the guy. There's no lines of supply in this game. I'm going to fly all the way across the entire map, and I'm going to go blow up this world over there just for him. So
it's that kind of stuff that drove me to play games mostly solitary, by the way. Yeah.
You get that, but this does put a big limit on it. And I just want to say I have moved away from the escort idea. I've done things like you've been talking about with drones and with the second level of the CRT, or with the combat table, not combat table, but the combat board instead. But at the time when this came out, when Learn Space 2.0 came out, I went deep into the escort stuff. It just, like I said, it turned into a monster game. So it's kind of what it is.
And then the reactionary movement, I didn't
really change anything. That's just from the original game.
and then the intercepting stuff. Now, I think so. This is where I had a problem, and this has been a huge problem with me in this game. And like I said, I haven't really played it, but I don't like the way. To me, having the base stations on the map, it looks weird to me, and I don't quite get it yet. I don't understand why ships can't just go right between the base stations and right into an empire's heartland. Why would you even go through a base station unless you're forced into one through a reactionary movement or something? I still don't quite get base stations.
Well, base stations are there, and you just got to kind of figure that they're a representation of the forward defense line.
Yeah.
But you can fly. You don't even have to go between the hexes. You can fly right through the hex with the base station.
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
But I've found that it's good to wipe out the base stations because it keeps your opponent from being able to stage forward. So in the game I'm in right now, all the Kazin base stations on the Klingon border have been destroyed except one. And the Kazin are a bit ship poor because the Klingons, beat them down a little bit. And I was sitting there thinking, well, I don't even want to move out and attack. But then I thought, no, I could move a fleet out, put it on the base station. You get that extra firepower.
It is a lot of firepower, yep.
And it's a threat that the Klingons have to pay attention to. So they do get you to stage forward a little bit. And that's, I think there's it's a good idea to destroy them.
And narratively, definitely. And I still think that for me, I think the base station rules, I feel like need to be tweaked just a little more. And one of the ideas I had, and I'm not going to do this, haven't tried it yet because I don't really know how it works, is maybe increasing their zone of control so that, if a ship flies within 2 hexes of a base station, it can move 1 hex at a time, no faster. And that would at least slow down these fleets. But
it's a good consideration. Now, I'm going to jump back to the cards real quick because a card that is not in that I've recently added is upgrading the base stations to battle stations, which is something that Starfleet Battles did.
That would be interesting, yeah.
They basically said by the time of the war, every base station had been upgraded to battle stations. Well, that was just a way to say, yeah, we made them stronger and we're getting rid of the old one.
Which actually makes a lot of sense, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and it makes sense. But what I did was I created a card so that your base stations would upgrade to battle stations, and they're a little stiffer. Okay, it takes 2 D results or an X result to destroy them instead of just 1 D result. So they present a lot more potential to stage from. So it makes sense that you'd want to wipe that out and not, if you get pushed back a little bit, suddenly have somebody put a fleet on a base station and you can't knock it off. It's threatening your space. So it's just something that I was thinking about, and so I added a card for it.
Well, that sounds cool, actually. Yeah, it's like I said, just a little bit more work, I think, on that. I don't know. I won't do it for the game I'm getting ready to play, but it's something in it.
But there's so many ways to approach it, and like I said, I love the drone idea. I never kind of I added drone cruisers, but they don't actually have drones, But I love the drone idea that you came up with. I never really thought about that.
And basically, it's just a drone. It's a drone. You get 1 drone counter, like the fighter counters, but it's a drone counter, and it's got the information on it like a ship would have.
That's an excellent idea.
And so I think here you're talking about reactionary movement, I think, but that's scouts. I found what I have found recently, and I need to go back. I need to go back and reread my own rules here from Byron Space 2.0, because you find when you read the rules that there are a lot of kind of gray areas as to how they should be implemented. And I think I was probably addressing a lot of that in that blue text right there, just saying this is why we would want to do this. Design notes. The rules are a little vague. They could cause confusion of scouts, and breaking those down. In fact, that would be another document that I do just because I want to, is go through the rules and kind of break everything down like that. Yeah, and another thing you did, and it still boggles my mind they didn't do this in the original game, is everybody should have scouts. I don't know why just the Federation does. It's kind of crazy.
Well, they added them for Klingons, Kazin, and I think Hydrons and Gorns. I think they might have added them for everybody, I believe, in Nexus. Okay. Nexus 1, they added them, but they were terrible scouts. One of them was like rated 016. I mean, there was no attack factor on it, and it had a terrible defense factor. So that's something that they obviously kind of just went, okay, we'll give everyone else scouts, but they'll be horrible ships. So I did add scouts for everyone, but again, that was in Nexus 6. Everyone had scouts, and so I just went by that.
And so here you're talking about combat, and so I'm going to stop sharing the screen for a second so I can show everyone the
the combat results or the combat table.
So let's see if I got it off to the side here. So we have the original. So this is the original,
nice and simple.
The old Federation Space original, and this is what you have created.
Yeah.
And there you can see the, and I don't know if you created this or I might have modified it. I can't tell, but there's the updated. And so you have the same, the same two rows, but you've added that the support rows.
Right.
And that's where, and I'll hold up this counter. I've got a Zinti. I don't know what that is. It's probably an escort carrier. If I can get the camera to cooperate.
I don't know if it'll focus on it, but
it may not. It wants to. I think it's trying to track my eye. Maybe if I hide my eye, it'll.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. A little blurry. But the important thing is there's a box around the defensive factor.
Yeah, it won't do it. So there's a box on the second number. Yeah, and that is if it has that, then it goes into this support column.
Yeah, it can be. It can be.
Or it can be, right.
Mm-hmm.
If it's not damaged too, right?
Correct. It can't be there if it's damaged. Long range support. Now somebody's added turn and ranges onto that, which is interesting too.
Well, that was me because I think I edited this. So this actually, well, if I got this backwards. So wrong hand. The ranges are actually in the rules, I believe. So certain races get die modifiers for.
That's Nexus 1. Nexus 1 brought that out.
And so I do like those rules, so I'm going to use those. So there's if you go into combat, there's the 3 ranges you go through.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to leave that in. And then the turn is just the turns for the rounds of combat.
Rounds of combat. That's good addition. The ranges, we experimented with them, but it still makes it hard on the Klingons because they get shot up trying to get to close range where their face was. But that's something that with the new changes, maybe it works. I never experimented with it that way. So
I'm going to find out because I'm going to use that rule.
And I want to know if it works.
Yeah. And here where we talked about this already, of course, the box around the defense factor means you can stay in that secondary support zone.
That was a response to the fact that carriers get shot to pieces. And they're very quickly shot up in the game. And then your fighters all die because if you're in space, there's no place for the fighters to land unless you're on a planet or base or something. So part of this was to say, well, the carriers are not frontline ships. They shouldn't be up there. Now, some came out in Starfleet battles that were like dreadnought sized. And those were the big CVs that were added. But the smaller ones are the ones that are set up, are supposed to be on that second tier. Yeah. Because I think you add 1 to the die roll to hit them. So they're less likely to be damaged. You can still hit them, but they're just less likely.
Yeah, which is good.
And so drone ships, we did an experiment. We were doing half factors from drone ships. I like your idea of drones.
And I'm looking down here in the purple. I made a note and I forgot I did this. And this is reminding me of how I had the drones working. So you had that drone counter in the front row. And it had smaller attack defense factors, but those factors actually combined with the enemy ship that's behind them. Nice. So it's almost like an extra layer of shielding kind of sort of. So you would have to knock out that drone before you could even think about hitting that ship that's in the support level, which is being buffed by the drone being out there. So it was only like a 1 or 2 point addition to those values, but still that can make a difference, right?
Yeah, big time. If you take a look at the combat results table, it advances in 2 and 3 point. Each column goes up 2 or 3 point additions. So I don't know. So is the drone counting kind of as an extra small ship, and it's required you shoot it before you shoot at the carrier? No, it's not. Okay, so it's really adding a factor.
I think I said that, but no. You could still take a shot at that carrier back there, but you'd want to get rid of that drone first because, like I said, defense factors are going to be amplified by that drone.
Okay, that's interesting. Now, if there's a ship also in the command, and I'm picking your brain to find out how your rules work because I like that. But if there's a ship in front of the supporting ship and a drone coming forward to support the ship, how does that work?
So the drone is just acting like another ship on that front line. It's just a small, okay. Like I said, this attack and defense factors are tiny compared to the regular ships. I mean, you are combining those with the carrier that launched it, actually, in this case, it was the strike cruisers for the Zinti, I think.
Right.
But it combines with those ships that launched them.
Mm-hmm.
So to destroy a drone doesn't take a whole lot. But again, what it's doing is now you've got a ship in that front line that's got to do something about those drones, right? So it's kind of
it can be left to the end, though. Obviously, the ships are going to be more dangerous.
I never play tested it, so I don't know if it would work. But
no, I like it, but I think there's got to be a penalty for not shooting the drone.
There could be. I mean,
how that works would be interesting to try to figure out. I'm not sure how to figure it out. It just strikes me as maybe there needs to be a reason to not shoot the drone, or a reason to shoot the drone outside. Because one or two, it's kind of like police ships. I added those, but they're almost, they have a very specific use in the game, but they're not really combat. You don't worry about them in combat. They add a factor to combat. You kind of go, who cares? Because if you damage the cruiser, it drops by 4 factors, and it's just so much better to do that.
It needs more thought. I mean, one of the other thoughts I had was, like you were saying, is to have those drones on the front line, but maybe not combine so much with the ship that launched it, but have the drone on the front line for a couple of combat turns, and then hit a ship and do damage to it. So it would flip it if you didn't. It's kind of like what you're talking about, but I didn't really like that as much. Like I said, I haven't play tested any of these, so
you could say if the drone's not shot, you can you can make your own table, roll on that table, and that might damage the defending ship, the ship that's being attacked.
And if not, take the drone away.
Yeah. Interesting. So, it's some interesting. Yeah. See, I love thinking through things like this.
more work to be done there.
Yeah, well, but that's the joy of it. I mean, like I said, it took about 4 years to get these rules in place, because you just keep finding things like that it may or may not work.
And this is all just still.
There's a lot in the combat thing, because there's extra level adds a lot of variation to the combat, like you said.
It does. It makes it. You need it, though. Honestly, I would never play this game without that support level.
Yeah, I think it's a very good addition. It's another one of those things that I really enjoy.
And this is just escort. I'm kind of going through this fast because we are probably running out of time. So the Romulan Mauler, I actually saw some. I think you updated the rules on the way that Maulers.
I did.
Maybe down here I saw it where they act, and I like the way you've changed this.
Mm-hmm.
I guess
this rule turned out to be too convoluted.
The column shifts.
Yeah, the column shifts just turned out to be a little too convoluted, a little too much.
Okay.
I did another update for it it's on the Geek. There's a thread on it in the forums, and I recommended that the Romulan Mauler doesn't get damaged when it triples its attack strength. Instead, it suffers a -2 modifier. It can still double or triple, but it's going to do it from a lesser attack value.
Okay.
And that automatically is fixed after the combat.
Okay, I'm writing notes down here because I'm probably going to take a look at that before I start playing.
Yeah.
I do have Maulers in the game, so I got to be careful.
Yeah, and we added, the Klingons get Maulers as well if you use the new counters that I did.
Well, we'll talk about the counters I used towards the end here when I talk about the playthrough I'm going to do.
Okay,
I don't. And then the cloaking device, I don't know that you.
Cloaking is weird in this game because the Romulans could cloak, but if they all cloaked in combat, it disengaged the ship that's in front of them, and they could just go shoot at another ship. So if the Romulans all cloaked, they automatically disengaged.
Yeah,
and they did combat, so it didn't really work very effectively. I think I've revisited cloaks as well on the forums and in some of the more recent Redux things.
Okay, I'll have to look for that too. Like I said, this playthrough I'm going to do is really more of a play test, but that's what it's there for.
Yeah, nothing wrong with doing the play if it works. Why would you go change it? But there's
Right.
That's one of those rules that, like I said, when you go through the rules, you kind of go, well, that's not going to work. I can't close and stay in combat. Why not? But so it's just one of those things. Ooh, more drones.
Yeah, I was just looking at this. So this is another idea I guess I had. So it says drones cannot be damaged, only destroyed. A damage roll will destroy. So they're very brittle, which they should be.
Sure. Yeah. And I agree with that.
That's all that's saying, I guess.
Yeah.
And then we go through disengagement. Now you did, and I don't think this was something you came up with, but you do call it out in that one of the Nexus magazines changed the disengagement a little bit so that you had a better chance of getting away, which I did like that.
Yeah, I think there's a +1 die roll modifier.
Oh, here we go. Nexus 1, there it is. Yeah, see, I put this optional rule may become law because I like that rule so much.
It makes it very easy to disengage. Now, disengage is kind of weird because if you surround a ship, like you use frigates to surround a stack, they can't disengage. You can't disengage into a hex that an enemy ship is in. So you can't go into another combat situation with disengagement. So that's how you get away from disengagement. But if it's real easy to disengage, and I think this rule would make it really easy to disengage for most part, it's going to be hard to kill a lot of ships.
Yeah.
But that might be a good thing. You know?
If you have small numbers of ships, that would be a good thing.
Yeah. Especially the original game, like we were talking, you may not run out of fleets as quickly.
Yeah, I agree. Yep. So I didn't put space docks in what
space docks were there for the Lyran space board got big. The Federation increased by 3 hexes in width. And of course, like I said, I added the Cardassians on the top, so it actually went on the top, and everything increased on the top as well. I forget how many hexes that was increased, if any, though. But space docks were a way to link the Federation. If you notice, all the Federation star bases are 6 hexes apart. So in one turn, you can move from starbase to starbase. Well, a space dock basically gives you that 6 hexes to go down on the Romulan border or the Klingon border or the Cardassian border on the north. And everything is within 6 hexes. You can always go from a base to a base. So they make sense in the sense of an internal lines of defense.
Yeah. And then let's see, base stations. We talked about the base stations.
Yeah, and this was an option to experiment right there in the blue. It's, an X is required.
To make them a bit stronger, yeah.
Basically, I moved base stations up to where the planetary systems were.
Yeah.
One of the rules this game you cannot use in this game at any level is the planetary system rules that are in the original game. They make it unplayable.
Yeah, I think I read
too strong, way too strong.
Now, have you eliminated those from all planets, or?
No, the Federation still has them, but their own. Literally, there's a counter that has a 6, and you damage it, and it goes down to a 3. The Klingons have them on every planet, and then other empires have them on specific planets.
I'm not sure how I'm going to handle that yet. I don't know if I'll have just the home worlds have it or how that's going to work.
Yeah, it made sense to me for the home worlds to have them, and so I created counters for that. And then I thought, well, like Zursk, right there on the border with the Klingons and Kzinti, it makes sense for that to have it.
That's true. So,
I tried to pick and choose a little bit.
Let's see. Oh yeah, so the Klingon stuff. I'm not too big into the subjugation rules for the Klingons either. I know it's an optional rule in the game that you can have mutinies and things, but I'm going to kind of just ignore that when I do the playthrough, I think.
I ignore that too. One of the things that I wanted to do is the Klingons should have planetary defense systems because, one, they're the second biggest empire out there, and they should have the economy for it. And it made sense in the idea that they are subjugating the people of their empires. That's really the whole point. But I don't like the mutiny rules, ship capture. I don't use that kind of thing. It's just, it adds a lot of stuff that's kind of doesn't add to the game, I don't think.
It's overhead, and you have to remember to do it, honestly, if you're in combat.
And that's true.
So, it's like self-destruct. It's like, you got to remember you can do that.
Yeah, it's like self-destruct. Yeah, I can blow up my own ship,
So fleet repair docs.
FRDs are interesting because in Nexus 1, they said that, hey, all star bases really act as FRDs. That was one of the Nexus 1 errata, and I've never used that.
Yeah,
But in front of the original game, I'm starting to see that might be a good addition.
Well, right now it's the star bases can repair, but you have to pay for it, right?
Yeah, you have to pay for it. That's the way the original game was. But then they came out with that errata, and I kind of went, oh well, I added FRDs. But then you're adding ships to it, and you're adding tugs to tow them around, because I never liked the idea of having to assign ships to tow around the FRD.
Yeah.
And suddenly you're adding more, and it's a little harder to do. I kind of like the idea. It makes you defend your star bases, and you have to move your ships back.
Yeah.
So there's a bigger ebb and flow. You might not be able to continue to attack if you take too much damage.
Maybe that's something to do to the base stations, and it give them some little bit of repair ability, not anything major, but just something to kind of make them even more important.
Well, since repair is just, you're flipping a counter. There's no gray level to repair. I don't think we could do repair ability. I don't think we could. And there's too many of them on the board.
There's a lot of them. Yeah, it'd probably be too much of a headache to track all that.
Yeah, it would be kind of tough.
Let's see. And here we're just going back into the economics stuff.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that you can add is cards and
okay. Here we go.
Economics every turn. Those are things that really help the game.
Yeah, and this was where I made some different notes about, because like I said, I totally changed the way that cards are. I don't have the 2 decks; I just have the 1 deck. So,
well, that makes a big difference.
It makes a difference. Although I did keep your bad cards must be played immediately. You'll see. I'll show you some of the example cards here in a minute. Yeah. But you have to play some of those immediately.
Yeah, one of the things I tried to make 1 deck at one time, but I had too much trouble making it work for all the races, so I kind of gave up to it. So I'm kind of interested. I'm very interested, actually, to see how you've come up with your cards and what you've got in there.
Let's see, because I conversions. I don't think I'm even going to fool with conversions either in the base game that I'm going to do, because it's like I said, very small number of ships, and I don't. It's just another layer that I don't really want to deal with.
Yeah, right, it's a part of it is that the Romulan Kestrel ships, as they've labeled them, they have to be converted. So that's part of the card play. That's on the cards that you pay for them. That's the version. So
which ships are they referring to? Because they talk about warbirds in the rule book, but there's no warbird counter in the game.
No, the Kestrel ships are all the Klingon ships that they receive.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and one of the things I didn't like is that, well, when you blow them up, of course, you can't rebuild them because the Romulans don't have that capability. So I kind of went, well, where's the Romulan fleet? Most of their fleet is Klingon ships in the original game. So with the counters that I made, I have a number of Romulan ships as well.
So I guess I'm not going to worry about that, because I'm just, the Romulans have Klingon ships, and I'm going to assume that's already been done. So.
Yeah, and that's fine. That's fine. If you can always, if you want to add more Klingon ships, add the cards. If you don't want to, leave them there.
Yep. And then repair. I think we talked about repair here.
Yep.
So we hit that, and then replacing destroyed ships and building new ships. Again, I'm going to use the limited by the counters, because I've got a smaller number of ships.
Yeah.
And
well, that's the original game, and you can limit it to a smaller number of ships. It still costs the same. None of this is different. Any of these rules are different than the original game. It's just that you expanded. I expanded them. Played around.
And then so the map I'm going to use, the wind cluster is on my map, but I've got it covered, as you'll see. So I'm using just the original section of the.
Oh, that's fine. Yeah, it's not even on there then. There's a lot of fleet adjustments in this variation.
And this is just notes I made to myself when I was brainstorming. So this doesn't really mean anything either. But yeah, this is just fleet setup, which I'm not too.
Yeah, I just tried to clean them up for the most part, because they were simplified. You can use your ships kind of where you want, but you can't just throw everything together at the beginning anyway.
And I think if you play the general war scenario, then you need this. Really, you need this information.
Yeah, It depends on how you want to play it too. Like you said, if you start the game over on the Romulan and Gorn side, which I think is just a really interesting idea,
It could happen.
then
It'll be one of the
that's
options.
I want to know how that goes. I'd like to see
Yeah.
how you're doing that.
So the other thing I'm going to have to do before I start is come up with some pre-existing treaties, right? So there are treaties I'm going to have in place, but I don't know which one. So that could also, affect the way that the war unfolds.
Well, if you're playing an open game,
Yeah.
then anybody could attack anybody. If you're gonna play a 2-player game, then obviously you're gonna have to have some set treaties.
Yeah.
How you want to do that is pretty much up to the players.
And this is more just fleet information. So I'm not.
Yeah, and those are simplified. It's pretty much just you can release, anytime you want.
Yeah. Kind of goes back to the
added a lot of fleets. The Klingons have more reserve fleets in this game than they.
Yeah, I noticed that. Yeah.
Yeah. So you might have to. Well, you're downscaling anyway, so that's fine.
Yeah. We'll talk about this too. I don't think I'm going to have the Lyrans in this game I'm going to play. I've got that part of the map blacked out. So
yeah,
this won't even happen.
And that's not in the in 2.0. The Lyrans or Lyrans, however you want to say them. Zinki, they all were added by a card play. So you just toss the cards. And
I'll show you this too here because we're almost at the bottom of the rules, and I'll show you this on my map. I've kind of done something different with, and what I did is what I didn't really do it. You did it. You've added the unknown race in the lower left-hand quadrant. You don't name it either one of these, so you go either way with them. And I kind of like it. In fact, I'll show you the count. Well, no, I'm going to tell you now. So I took the counters for, I forget either one of these, and made them, there's no names on them, just the attack, defense, movement values. So you can use the counters and call them whatever you want and put them in that corner down there and use them.
I like that little corner. I don't really do anything with it on the Redux, on the downscaling. I don't really mess with it at all. But for some reason, I really like it there. And I don't like the hydrants being stretched out over it. I kept trying to do that, but I just never really felt good about it. I never liked it too much. So I've actually got maps made where that corner is called Talar or Telarian, the Telarian Empire. And on another map, it's called the Zinkithi Empire. I just renamed it. And then on a third map, I actually have it named with just all the planets are named after my brother and my friends. My brother passed away in 2019, so I just kind of made it a little homage to him down there. And you can use whatever you want in that race. I've never figured out rules for how to use it though.
Well, and I think I may have a card. I think I used your cards where you can bring either one of these in through card play. Mm-hmm. And I kind of like that. And I can see having this unknown race down there in that little corner and just bring them in through, pull a card and roll a D6. And if it may or may not come in on your side.
Yeah, that would work. I mean, that's the simplest. That's the beauty of cards. You can always just use those for whatever you want. And I think
that's what that's what you have in here, right? It's they move with their allies or
yeah, pretty much. They move and stack with the allied race. And then there's also a diplomatic card for the opposition alliance, either the alliance or the coalition. If they get it, they can break the diplomatic agreement with them, give them a better deal, essentially, and they go back to peaceful.
And I have to look at, I can't remember how I did my card, but I probably accounted for, if you roll a 1 to 2, they come in on the alliance side, a 2 or 3 or 4 or whatever. Ooh. We'll take a look when we get there.
It's really a toss up on your cards. That's nice.
Yeah, it's more random. I think that's what I tried to do. And of course, the Lyran Democrat Republic, I don't even think I have that on the map. It may be, I can't remember, but I don't even have the counters for that.
It's on the Lyran Space 2.0 map. It's not on any other maps that I've ever had. I do have somewhere. I have a card where it could enter. You could just basically get some ships. They appear.
I may have that card as well. I can't remember, but I just, like I said, don't have the counters. I would love to have a complete Lyran Space 2 set of maps and counters. But unfortunately,
what I'm going to do, like I said, I've tightened the card. I've done a whole new revamp of the cards just to tighten up some of the language, and also added some cards for like hidden minefields and stuff. If you're moving around in your opponent's space, you might run into a minefield and you have a chance to hurt to flip a couple of ships.
That's good. I like that.
Uh,
That's the kind of
yeah,
stuff I like because it just adds so much to the game. It's
yeah, there it is. There's a Democratic, there's an LDR fleet. I haven't made it yet. I made the card, but I haven't actually put down which ships are in the fleet because I wanted to make a table for it where you might get some good ships and you might get some terrible ships. But it's just a card that the coalition might get, and the Lyran player can go, okay, I'll pay this much and I'll see what I get.
Yeah.
So again, just card stuff. And Juggernaut was in Captain's Log #1.
And I actually printed. I'm not going to use these in my playthrough coming up, but I actually did print these out because I thought that was a really cool idea. So I've got like 4 of these counters somewhere.
Yeah, the Juggernaut was one of those Starfleet Battles scenarios that my brother and I and my friends, we loved playing it. We had a great time with it. So that's why I was like, yeah, I'm putting that in there. I've just got to put it in there.
And then the Tholians there, I clicked off that, but the Tholians, I may have a card for that, but I can't remember how they enter the war. I have to go back and look.
They just enter on turn 15. Now in Lyran Space 2, I added a card for them to have whatever the wandering Tholian fleets were that ended up in Starfleet Battles being added to them. When I downsized it, I was like, I'm just not going to bother with that. I don't think it's in my current card decks at all, even.
So I'm going to grab my card deck here. And what I did is I printed 2 copies and just smashed them into one deck for now. It's basically, so I've got a
nice.
The back, they're sleeved, and then they're done up in the, it's partly hard to see there because it's not going to focus, but the L cars.
I like it though. I like you see, you have talent. Okay, here, let me show you this. Okay, here's the cards I professionally made up earlier. I just put the box on it, and you have an alliance and coalition here, but
there's nothing wrong with that.
There's nothing on there except print.
That's all you need. This was in I forget where I found the
template.
The template, but it fit.
But it looks good, and I thought about I should put a ship on it or something, and I was like, oh man, I would never, I'll never get that done.
And so it's funny. I pulled this one up. The first one is the Lyran Democrat Republic, and it says on a die roll of 1, they join the war on your side. And you can only play this once in the game. So that's how I handled that, I guess.
I like it.
So I'm just going to grab.
I ended up realizing that there were cards that probably like that, like you said, should only be played once in a game. And so I either discard the card afterwards, or I put it in the card explanation document that it would be only played once.
Which is what I did here. So this is for the minor empires. I've got, the Talarian Alliance.
Oh, yeah.
So you roll the D6 on a 1, they enter the war on your side. Nice. If not already in an alliance. So this card could come up again, I guess, or they could already be in an alliance. And it says this card is only used once per game. So once you've activated that, you won't see it again.
Yeah.
And of course, your ECCM card is in here for the scouts.
I like the ECCM stuff. I like the scout stuff. It's so simple in the original game. It's just they do a couple of special things and it's done.
Now, here's one. You probably can't read it because the camera won't focus, but this is the Hairy Mud card. So the Hairy Mud card says that during the next economic phase, you gain no EPs.
Oh, my. That's harsh.
It's Hairy Mud, though, right?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Boy, that's hard.
And then I've got this is a capture card. So the capture card states that choose any one of your opponent's frigate-class ships and place it at a base or base station of your own. After 2 turns, it becomes yours to use. So you capture a ship randomly. So it's just the random events I wanted in the game.
Yeah. I took stuff like the Squire of Gothos from, the original series, and you lose a cruiser for a turn. It pops back, at a starbase later. But I love random events like that.
I love that.
Yeah.
So here's back in service. You may have had some back in service. Place a new heavy cruiser class ship at a home starbase at no cost. Maybe played once in the game by each side. So it's like a free ship that comes back, right?
Yeah, I've got a number of free builds in mind, and usually it's either a cruiser or a frigate or a destroyer, and you just get free builds, and that helps keep the ship count up. You know, like you start losing those ships, and you're like, I really, really badly need this, and I don't have the money to buy it. And you get one of those cards, and it's just wonderful.
And then here's another. So we had Harry Mudd. Of course, we got to have Cyrano Jones.
Oh yeah.
And this says add +3 EP to the cost of the next ship you build.
Oh wow.
And it says card must be played immediately. So you have to. That's one of those bad cards you can't put down.
So you've got to build a ship that turn.
Yeah. Or have or your the next time you build a ship, if you're not already building it, right?
Right. Makes sense.
Ferengi traders. I think you might have had Ferengi traders. I can't remember.
I had Ferengi traders in there. I had Orion pirates in there just as a you lose or you get EPs or lose EPs. What I originally did, Lyran Space 2, I was going to have next generation ships in it as X ships from Starfleet battles, thinking in those terms. And I made up a whole bunch of ships, but it just became too much of a problem to bring them in. And so the Ferengi traders was kind of just left over from that. Like I said, it was kind of a next generation thing, like Cardassians. So they work as they're kind of just merchants.
Yeah, it works. I think
it works.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
Just gonna look, maybe grab a couple more, then we'll keep going. Did you have legendary engineer in yours?
I did, and I've added legendary captains. So
I don't. Yeah, I remember you did have that. I don't think I had the captains in here.
The captains, well, they came in later. I added them more recently. I've got to put the new card deck explanations on the Geek, and that'll hopefully let people make their own cards if they want to use those cards. But legendary captains, just I think they shift one column over for your attack.
That's good. That's useful.
Yeah, it's got to be a cruiser or a command cruiser, though. It can't be a dreadnought.
Did you have ion storms, or did I?
No, I didn't. I had asteroid fields and dust storms.
But I think I kept those, and I added ion storms.
Nice.
But the ion storm says, what does it say here? Flip an opposing starbase to its damaged side before combat round. So again, remember, like I said, you'll hold these in your hand and play them.
Wow.
When you choose.
I have a treachery card that you can do that with.
And that's probably, it may have been where I got the idea from. Maybe I just
Yeah, I redid the treachery card. The original treachery cards were pretty much flipped the starbase. And now they are, you can choose a starbase, base station, or ship in combat, and it can't fire until your opposing player or a historic engineer is played. So essentially, you know, it's the classic, all right, here they come, and wait, now everything's offline. What happened?
Yeah, I love that. Yep, I love that's flavor, right? It adds so much more to the game.
So it doesn't flip it, but it just basically sits there, and it does nothing. So if you're counting on a starbase to save you, you're in trouble.
and then here's what I added that I know you didn't have, but this one, if at the top there it says Herbert, and I don't know if you can see the guy, the hippie from
from Eden.
The Eden show is on there. Yeah. So this reads, because remember, you can buy these cards too. It says, this is the Joker card of the deck, most likely placed here by a minor official notorious for his rigid and limited patterns of thought. This card has no effect. Hopefully you didn't spend any EP on it. You reach, brother. So that's a cool one.
It's like, too bad.
So if you paid EP to get that card, it's like, that's not good.
That's not good. But yeah, it's, you know, cards are 1 EP and they get used a lot. I mean, we quickly found that cards, they didn't take over the game, but they add so much to it, like we were talking earlier. And we just quickly found that you're going to have a full hand of cards, however many is allowed. I think in my rules there's 5, and you were thinking of limiting it to maybe 2 or 3. But however many you're going to have at every turn. That's one of the first things you're going to do. And they're a lot of fun. They just add a lot of fun.
And I love
stuff. Yeah. So we need to touch base on like your rule ideas. I need to know what those are. And I'd love to. We need to exchange card decks and everything else. You know, it's
probably so. Yeah, it's good. Some of these other things. Just looking through my notes. So yeah, I am gonna. Let me see if I can call up one last thing here. I am gonna do a playthrough. That was what led me to reach out to you to do this interview. The playthrough I'm going to do is going to be. It's going to be Federation space, but with your counters. Now, this is the map. I've already set this up. So I just took this picture this morning. This is a map I had printed up at Print and Play. It's your map from your most recent. Let's see if we can go to the corner here where you're talking about this. I mean, we can't. There's no names on the planets at all. I think I took them off. Sorry.
Right. That's all right.
I didn't know. You know, I think there's a question mark there or something. So I took a piece of window tint for cars, and I have this portion of the map blocked off. So what we're looking at is just what Federation Space, the original Federation Space map looks like, right?
Right. Yeah.
It may be a little wider because, like you said, when you added the Lyrans over here, I think you probably stretched out the Federation. Maybe.
No, I didn't. When I had just added Lyran Space, that didn't stretch the Federation. That was really Lyran Space 2.0, and that one's got Cardassians up top. So this is the original map, it looks like.
So then this is your original map.
Yeah.
And so what I did, and the other thing that I don't think we talked about this, but one of the rules that you mentioned that you were going to do or try is every base station should have a ship on it, at least one ship. So I really like that idea, and I kind of kept that here.
Well, and I agree with that. In the initial setup, anytime that you're not at war with someone else, you should have a ship on that station.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's it.
That just makes sense to me. Now you're using some older counters. Those CVs for the Gazins, the 10-10-6s were in the early playtests. So this is really interesting.
Well, and this is kind of unfortunate too on my part. So I made everything you're looking at here. I made through print and play, but I kind of threw this together as fast as I could. I may have pulled counters from a couple of different of your iterations. I'm not sure.
That's possible.
My intent was to keep as close as I could to the original game, but use your updated counters. So I don't know if there may be. I don't know if this is going to imbalance the game or not.
I went through a lot of iterations, like you said, and it doesn't bother me that there's a factor or two difference. I ended up going back to the Kazini original CVs that they had in the original game. So, but the 10-10-6s don't bother me. Dreadnoughts, I've got Kazin Dreadnoughts if you wanted to use them in there. The Klingon CVs, the D6 CVs went to 686s, I think, in the last thing that I did. But any of this stuff will work. It's just, the game is so much fun that it's so interactive. But you got to put your AR up on the Geek or somewhere. You gotta. I'm
gonna do this on my channel. That's what I was saying. This is gonna be the next. Well, one of the playthroughs I do. I'm probably gonna have two at the same time going on. But this is gonna be one of the next playthroughs I start. Hopefully, I don't know if it'll be next week or the week after.
Good,
but soon. Very soon. Look for it on the channel. I'll post the videos on Board Game Geek as well. But I don't know if I'm going to play the entire war. Like you said, who finishes the game of this? We'll
it's pretty big.
Happens. It is big. It could be very time consuming, but I do want to see how it plays. I've never played a game of Federation Space, so this will be interesting. And I do want to play Federation and Empire at some point. So
that'd be interesting too, because they've updated it since the original. I haven't looked at it in depth since the original one, so it's been updated, and obviously they've done a whole lot with it, I think. So that's another thing that's interesting. It's completely different, but it's still got a lot of interesting look to it.
So any advice for my attempt at it? So again, I am using. Let me grab one of these. So what I did do was take with your counters. I did use these original organizations. So I'm not using much beyond this. I did add scouts to every fleet.
Well, and that's fine. I usually replace a frigate with a scout, and that way you don't enlarge the fleets. Excuse me. I will say this. I think you're going to have a lot of trouble attacking the Kazin because they've got so many ships. One of the things that I did, if you look at the recent AAR I've done, is I moved the Kazin reserve fleet off to ostensibly defend against the Lyrans.
So they're on the homeworld at start, right?
It's on the star bases,
which is near. Yeah, okay. Which is
no. We created the Kazin reserve fleet from the ships on the homeworld and the Federation fleet that could attack the Klingons. So I just looked at the OBs and moved some things around, and I would go ahead if you want to go ahead and try it with the fleets you have there, because that's it's a different setup. Obviously, you have a lot of different ships. But it'll be interesting to look at. I don't know what you're going to do about planetary systems. I think that
I don't either.
You've got to, on some level, do away with them or make them smaller, because those will kill everything.
I like your idea of the strategic worlds. You know, the ones on the borders would have maybe just a small
They would
defense.
have something. I think
like
I
that
put
idea.
8s, usually attack defense of 8 and 4 on the flip side, on the border worlds. So, but yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing this.
And like I said, I won't be playing it as someone trying to win a game or just big strategic thought. It's going to be narrative. So I'm going to treat an empire. I'm going to step into their shoes and say, okay, do I want to take this planet? Do I want to knock out these base stations first?
Right.
And have the other empire respond more of a story than a strategic play. And in doing so, to get a feel for how these ships actually handle combat, right? So maybe we can balance the original game so it's playable for people that own the original game. Maybe they can pull it out and play it again.
I look forward to seeing it.
What they think their cards. So
Yeah.
I've also got my Star Trek. This is from the TAC Wing, so I got the themed dice I'm going to use too.
I have the old Starfleet Battles dice where the ones are always the symbols.
I always wanted those. I never got a copy of those or a set of
my
those.
brother had them, and my brother had them, and I kept them. And then I thought, well, if I'm going to play Federation Space, these are the dice I'm going to use.
Hang on to those. Those are awesome.
I'd love to find more of them actually, and I haven't found them anywhere on the internet. They're kind of rare, I guess. But I'm looking forward to seeing your play. That's going to be really interesting.
Please leave comments and let me know what you think. And like I said, I'll post these at Board Game Geek as well, and they'll be on the channel. So leave comments either place, and I think it's gonna be fun.
Yeah, it looks like just a bunch of fun. Especially, I really do want to find out what's in your card deck. And
I'll have to. I'm sure I've got the original files that I used to make those up. Maybe I can zip you a copy and let you take a look at those.
Oh, that'd be great.
Maybe we can collaborate at some point and come up with just some more cards, or who knows.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I've updated the card deck a couple of times, and the latest iteration has a bunch of new cards. I had them professionally made, which is always fun. You get professional cards; they're fun.
Well, and like I said, the cards, these were draft cards, so I really need to do a better job on these. Get a nice deck made up. Same thing with the counters. I use print and play, and I got to tell you that the counters are okay, but there was a lot of registration errors with them, and some of the counters actually came out wrinkled even. So they're usable, but I'm not thrilled with them.
I got lucky. Carrie Anderson, who did SPI Shipyard, I think he made game counters for war games. And he retired. He's not really making counters anymore. But before he did that, he made me 2 or 3 sets of 5/8 inch counters for this game for all the ships that I've made. I've got several sets of them because I knew that it's going to be unique, pretty much. And so that's one reason why it's hard for the counters that I put on the Geek for people to make them, because they're set in his templates. And I've tried to move them to different templates, and I don't know. I can't get it done.
So I did it for print and play. Now their templates are very unique, and it took a long, painstaking time to. And I still, like I said, this is a draft set, so my counters are not. I need to go back and clean them up because the text sizes are different. Right. Some of them are small, some are large. I need to go back and redo everything yet again to get what you would call a final copy, I guess, or a playable copy.
Well, see, one of my big problems is that when I made these counters, and this was 10 to 14 years ago, I did them in an old version of Visio 5, and Visio 5 was old then, and now it's like dinosaur old. So they don't translate. I can't pull them into anything else to try to update them and put them on a different template. So it just may not get done because I can't see. I'm not good with computer stuff anyway. So
if you've already got a good counter set, don't worry about it.
Yeah, I've got the counters. I just wish I wish I could put them out there and make it easy for other people to use them, but I don't have the ability to do that right now.
If I go back and clean up my counters, eventually I may post those to Board Game Geek because, like I said, they are for print and play. I don't know if anybody else could print those out, but at least you could go to print and play to get a usable copy.
Well, and that, that's all you can ask. If somebody wants to make them, they can make them.
And I think mine are 5/16. I think I did upsize them a little bit. But like I said, I copied a lot of yours. And when I did copy paste in some instances where it rescaled and made the text smaller, and not as bad as the original counters, but some of those are hard to read.
Yeah, the original counters were like, oh my gosh, eye strain. That's one reason I wanted bigger counters. I was just like, yeah, I'm going to make this bigger.
Let's see if I have what I use with those counters. No, I have a magnifying glass sitting out on the desk here, but it's like I can't see those original counters without a magnifying glass.
Need tweezers to move them, Yeah, it's I know exactly what you mean. And
Yeah,
as I've gotten older, of course, it's more like, oh my gosh, I've got to have bigger counters. I've got to have a little more space.
I'm actually I'm supposed to get cataract surgery beginning of next year, and they tell me that I won't need glasses or reading glasses again. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to take your word for that, because that sounds like heaven to me. If I'm playing these games.
Nice. I dearly hope it's true. That's really
I
nice.
do too.
I will say that BoardGameMaker.com is where I've had professional boards made, and I've got them blown up into the larger size for the larger counters, and they've done an excellent job. And they're literally boards just like the old Avalon Hill wargaming boards.
So that. I think I've used them as well. Print Play does good boards too. They did a really good job. Well, hold on, wait a minute now. They did an okay job on the board too. That the board, it's got some issues where when it showed up, it kind of had blistered a little bit, so it raised off the board, and I had to flatten it out. So I'm not going to say it was perfect. It looked nice, but
well, I've got my original boards I did with Print and Play, and then I went ahead on the recommendation of someone online. I went ahead and did Board Game Maker, and they were more expensive, but they're much more professional, and they came out just perfectly. And I was just like, I'm happy. I'm ecstatic with this. I have actually not had the Lyran Space 2.0 board made.
Wow.
I've only made
that'd be nice. I would love to have that.
There's now it's on the Geek that there's a single file of it, so it could be made.
Yep.
And it's good enough to make them, but I just haven't made it.
I could make the board easy, but again, I don't have the counters, and that's the sticky part for me. It's just I would have to spend so much time to transfer those into a template that I could have somebody use.
What's rough? I actually, those counters, all the silhouettes I made in Visio, so I made those out of circles, squares, and triangles. So like, well, you get the Klingon ships, and they were murder. And, because they were different, but fortunately they worked out, but yeah, it just takes so much time, and I'd probably have to redo everything again if I tried to get the templates, unless I can find somebody who's much more computer savvy than I am, and they can take them and get it done.
Yeah, that would do it quicker.
And speaking of that, the Federation Space game does have a what is it? What's it called? Online playing, where the map's online and everything else.
Oh, one of the I know what you're talking about.
I can't think of the words right now.
I can't either. I know what you're talking about, but yeah.
But it's on it's on one of those sets. A guy did come and he made it with the updated counters. Now he changed. I forget who it was.
Was it Vassal?
Vassal, yeah.
Okay.
He made a Vassal set for it, and it has the updated counters with the updated factors on it to play the original game. He changed the factors on like the Enterprise, and I don't know that he included many of the extra ships at all, but the original game's on there, and he did a great job with the map and the counters there. So it's there to mess with if anybody wants to.
I think, and I'm going to have to go back and look, I did a Vassal module for this as well, and I may have used your...
Did you do it?
No, because I never uploaded it. I still have it in my back pocket. But I think it's Lyran Space too, and I think I have the Cardassians and everything. I think, but I remember adding my cards into it. I'll have to go back and dig it up and see.
Yeah, I would. That's one of the things I'd love to take the Vassal module that he did that's on the original map and get the cards added to it, and maybe add some more counters. And then you downsize or upsize according to your desires, and add the Lyran Space portion, and you pretty much got everything.
And the other thing is, I don't know if you're familiar with Tabletop Simulator, but I've done a lot of work in that, and it would be
I've heard
just
of
as
it.
easy to enter it into Tabletop Simulator and have the cards and everything.
Well,
So that's
if
something
that would
else.
work, if you wanted to do that, I would be ecstatic to see it.
And like I said, I have to go back and look at some point. I will do that because I know I have a Vassal module, so I have a lot of the counters, but I don't have them all. But to chop those things up digitally and put them in Tabletop Simulator is way easier than trying to do physical copies. So
Oh yeah, okay. Well, that works, and that would make it easy. Like you said, you get to play. You can play around in there forever.
yeah,
I'd love to see it in there. I'd love to see it with the card options. I mean, all these things can be added or removed according to how people wanted to play. And see the fleets. The fleets are all there.
yeah. At some point, I'll have to get it into Tabletop Simulator. Maybe we can get you back on and do a demo of Lyran Space 2.0.
That'd be cool. Yeah, we could play a game. That'd be neat.
Yep. But in the meantime, I'm gonna start this playthrough. So look for that. I think we're probably over time here, so we probably ought to end this here pretty soon.
Okay.
But I appreciate you being on. I really do. I appreciate all the work you put into updating Federation Space. And again, I wish Amarillo Design Bureau would knock on your door. And
unfortunately, if they did, it'd probably be with clubs in hand. I don't know.
Right? I know
that's kind of how they do. But
the ABB police.
Yeah, exactly. But I'd love to see. I'm looking forward to your playthrough.
Okay. Well,
exciting.
Hopefully very soon. I'll post this interview first, and then hopefully not long after that, I'll start it. I've got to do some minor rules adjustments and determine which rules I want to keep and toss out.
Sure.
I've got to generate the chart for how I'm going to start the war. That'll be a random start. So once I do that, yeah, look for it here pretty soon.
That'll be fun. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Thanks.
All right. Well, again, great talking with you, and we'll get you back on here at some point, I hope.
Oh, that'd be great. I'd love to do it. I'd love to follow up, especially with all the stuff we've been talking about. There's
we haven't even scratched the surface. We didn't even talk about Star Trek, right?
we hardly talked about that.
All right, Byron. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, Mike. Much appreciated. God bless.